"What's so funny?" asked the psychiatrist. Arthur replied, "I'm just thinking of a joke." The psychiatrist asked, "Do you want to tell it to me?" Arthur said, "You wouldn't get it." Recognize this quote's movie? Stay tuned to find out, or check out the title of this episode of Talking Pictures Trivia.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me is
Tom.
Additionally, joining us as guests this week are
Ragnar
and Kevin.
Thanks for joining us. Ragnar has joined us for 9 episodes, including A Quiet Place, Parasite, and Chinatown. Kevin has joined us for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and our Talking Trivia series. Ragnar and Kevin still conveniently like movies. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with a movie quiz, as these pivotal questions will determine who earns today's trivia crown. In round 1, each question is worth 1 point, and in round 2, each question is worth 2 points. Then, once the fierce competition is over, we follow it up with our famous movie rant where anything goes. Tom, tell us about today's movie.
Today we are finishing our exploration of Batman and Joker movies by going back to 2019. Brexit is not only trending on Twitter, but it is trending in all of Europe. The USA and China continue their trade war. The president is impeached for the first time this term, and none of us are aware of what is right around the corner in the new year. During all of this, Todd Phillips' movie Joker was released in theaters alongside Downton Abbey, the movie, Abominable, Rambo: Last Blood, and The Addams Family. Nick will be quizzing us today. Nick, what is Joker all about?
This is a fairly dark tale of the struggles Arthur Fleck is having with not only himself, but surviving in society as a whole. It does focus somewhat on his mental illness issues and really is more of a skin within the Batman universe than a true Batman or Joker story. And I'll leave the rest of it for the episode because I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. Tom, if you only had one word to describe Joker, what would it be?
Overwrought. Ragnar?
Unreliable. Kevin?
Horrifying.
And my word would be
It's time for question 1.
Arthur Fleck is taking how many medications?
Oh, locked in.
Locked in.
Closest without going over.
Locked in.
Ragnar, start us up.
7.
Kevin.
I had 7 as well.
Tom.
I also had 7, honest to God.
Okay, everyone's getting the points. It was 7. I kind of mentioned this, and it's the first thing that comes to mind, I think, to anyone who watches this film, but the topic of mental illness.
Take it away, Tom.
Well, I mean, I think the mental illness is interesting. So this influence is clearly Taxi Driver, right? It looks like Taxi Driver. It's alluding to Taxi Driver in many ways, as well as other Scorsese films, but I think most prominent is Taxi Driver. Travis Bickle, our main character in Taxi Driver, really doesn't have a diagnosable mental illness. It's actually kind of hard to identify, and the movie makes no effort to do so. In this film, our character seems to he seems to have a particular type of mental illness, or a collection of them. However, it isn't so much that they're kind of mysterious or unknowable the way they are in Taxi Driver. Here there isn't any institutional support to help a person with these conditions survive or prosper in the world, right? And so the chaos of the world, the chaos of somebody with mental health issues, is that this world is not prepared to help them. It's a world that doesn't raise people, and that speaks to these issues of fatherhood that are both biologically abandoned as well as institutionally abandoned. And I think the mental health issues reveal that in the picture.
Of note, the first watch I had of this film was before I actually saw Taxi Driver. So it was kind of new to me. And I wonder if that influenced my appreciation for this film. Now seeing both, I see a lot of the connections that Tom is talking about.
Yeah, the connection to Taxi Driver is, impossible to ignore, as is the one to King of Comedy, also by Scorsese, which is more of the talk show business side of this movie. But the mental health angle, it's very interesting because the point is he is not diagnosed with anything. I think that's key. And maybe what's his, Travis in Taxi Driver, is that his name? I don't know.
Travis Bickle, yeah.
Right. I don't know if he's diagnosed with anything either. And I think that's on purpose because they don't want to specifically say a person with, XYZ disease or disorder or what have you cannot make it. It's just more like someone that, for whatever reason, doesn't feel like they belong, or they're able to connect with people in a city full of people. And how they just bury that feeling with more pills and more pills and more pills and more pills. And then when they become reliant on those pills, when they become addicted, it gets taken away from them because of some tax cuts or what have you. So I feel like this might be, in terms of a political commentary, the weakest part of the film, because I feel like it's set up. I see the setup, but I don't hear the punchline. The only punchline I get is that due to his illnesses, due to his craziness, he becomes an unreliable narrator, which is great. And I enjoy the unreliable narrator aspect of this movie, but I don't see how that's a statement to anything that he was building up in the first half of the movie. So I do think that's the weakest part of the film.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. In the beginning of the movie, I think he's with the social worker, and she alludes to why he's there, and he sort of sidesteps that question. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they ever really come back to it. They just kind of say he's here. Deal with that. It could be any number of reasons why he's here, but he's here and he's being forced to be here. That's what we know.
The one thing that came up in that conversation, Kevin, was that it sounded like he was already committed and released.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why he had to be there. But...
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'm projecting, how our society works onto this fictional society, but people aren't involuntarily committed very often in our society. It takes it takes quite a bit to get someone to receive treatment against their will, and I think that's clearly what has happened here. I don't think that he had some crisis and said, "Hey guys, I need help." That didn't seem like what was going on. But I think that kind of speaks to maybe not making so much of a commentary on those issues, and just saying, hey, if someone were to find themselves in this situation, here's what could happen, and make of that what you will.
I feel like we might be hearing your prequel in the guest question coming up later. How do you get committed?
Possibly. Play those cards close, yeah.
Yeah, I do think that in both cases, in this and in Taxi Driver, they are seeking to push the energy in an exogenous direction, away from the kind of biological malfunctions of the individual and towards the social malfunctions of the society in which the individual finds himself. In both cases, in New York and Taxi Driver and Gotham in this film, it's the city that is far more manic and crazy than the individual inside the city, right? And the individual ends up becoming a reflection of the society in which he inhabits. In the case of Travis Bickle, he becomes an unlikely hero, despite the fact that his behavior is entirely irrational and just kind of misinterpreted as heroic. In the case of the Joker, he becomes kind of a populist hero, do really, again, almost kind of accidental. He was just sort of defending himself against the subway Wall Street people. And so again, there is this idea of a manic society that is far crazier than whatever disorder either Joker or Bickle has.
About the Manic City, it was only on the second time, because the first time I saw it, I thought the Manic City side of it was pretty heavy-handed at some point. And now seeing it the second time, and again going back to the unreliable aspect of his narration or of what we're watching, maybe it's just his perception of the city is so dark and evil and rude, and he's the nice one and he's the good guy. So I think it is the city's condition is amplified because of the perspective we're watching it from, that I didn't really see that before I took it as fact rather than his perspective. That's just something I thought about in the second viewing.
It's time for question 2.
What is the song the finance bro from Wayne Investments sings in the train?
Locked in.
Locked in.
Locked in.
Okay, Ragnar, start us up.
Send in the clowns.
Kevin?
Send in the clowns.
All right, send in the clouds.
I was gonna say, Tom, who you sending in? Okay. Again, we got a full sweep here. It's all good. It's only round 1 point each, so they could be a little easier.
Send in the pantaloons.
Send in the breaking point of Arthur Fleck. So let's talk about that.
What a transition. Well, it's. I mean, one thing is, I think we already mentioned this, is it's accidental, right? It's him in an act of just basic, normal self-defense. Somebody's kicking him, and he responds, and this becomes meaningful in a way that he didn't intend. It's not an intentional action until the third person, right? I
was going to say it becomes intentional.
It becomes intentional. Yeah, when he chases that person out of it. And so it's and I think the movie kind of leads us to think that this is something that is bound to happen, considering the sort of populist position the film takes. It imagines that eventually someone from the lower orders is going to bite back against someone from the higher orders, and that Joker happens to be the person who does this, in part because he does it in the most violent way, but also because he sort of has an icon he's able to embody as well, the clown with the fangs, as we see in the newspaper. And so he becomes both the person who's willing to be violent enough to do it, as well as the meme that can pass from that event into kind of a tropic dispersion of this image.
Yeah, I think the only difference between when he got beat up by the kids with the signs and when he gets beat up by the Wall Street folks are that he happens to be armed. So I think it's worth mentioning that, yeah, I guess you could call this his breaking point, but he would have had several breaking points if not for circumstance before that.
Yeah, I like what Kevin said. I would agree with that. The movie at first glance, that subway scene is his breaking point, but he broke a long time ago. As you can see, when he was talking to the social worker, there's an instant of a flashback where he's in involuntary confinement and he's smashing his face on a window. That guy was broken. The only thing he needed was a gun and a little push. And I think if we stick to the confines of the movie, I think the actual breaking point is when his medication is taken away from him. Once he is told that the program is cut and that he won't be receiving any more pills, and basically told that the government does not care about him, that's when the movie really takes off and all these nearly fantastical events start happening. The girl, how he just charms this girl all of a sudden, and then just how much of it is in his head. Was he even the killer of those three people? So I think he broke when the medication stopped coming.
I like the line where he says, I think it's when the two people come to check up on him, which really they had ulterior motives, I think. But he's like, yeah, I stopped taking my pills. I feel much better. Right before he kills the one guy in a pretty gruesome fashion.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of round one, everyone is tied at 2 points all. We'll be back for round two after a message from one of our valued sponsors.
Have an idea for an ad? Is it a fake product? We'll air it. Send us an audio clip of your fake ad, and after it goes through our rigorous and strict reviewing process, we'll fit it into an episode. Don't have an idea for an ad? Make one anyway and send it to fakeads@talkingpicturestrivia.com or call 201-467-8679 and leave a voicemail of your ad. You'd sound really good on radio. This ad requesting fake ads is a real ad requesting you to send us fake ads. Seriously, send us your fake ads.
And we're back. We're at the key point of our episode where we ask the guests a critical question. This goes to both of you. If you could write your own sequel for Joker, what would be the plot?
I was curious to see if there was going to be a sequel, and I started looking up, Joker sequel, and I saw that Willem Dafoe had a pretty interesting idea where I don't know if he was proposing that he be the guy or whatever, but he proposed, what if somebody tries to be like a Joker copycat, and how would Joker take that, and how would they end up being rivals, and so on and so forth. I think that would be pretty cool. Either that or a Penguin backstory. I think the last time we saw Penguin, it was Danny DeVito, and it was pretty nonsensical. I'd like to see at least an attempt to get that right.
Nonsensical or amazing?
He's going to be in the new movie.
That's right. He's in the Batman.
He's in the Batman, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm a big fan of this movie. Regardless of all the criticisms I may have, I think it's a very good movie. So I want to say that because what I'm going to say next might be contradictory. I think a sequel is a terrible idea for this movie. Not only am I a fan of this movie, but I'm also a fan of Batman, and I have tons of comics and everything. So I say this with a big heart towards Batman. I think all the Batman stuff is the weakest part of this movie. This movie could take all that Batman stuff away, and it could just be this kind of character study and be probably even better. So the movie has a very open-ended ending, and for there to be a sequel means that there has to be a definitive ending so that they have a concrete place to start to move forward. And I think that will take away a little bit of the magic of the ending of this movie. That's why I'm against it. So if it must be done, if the movie studios must bring in a ton of money and drop it on my lawn, then I think it should be that, Bruce Wayne is now Batman, and old man Joker has a kingdom of people who don't feel like they belong to society. Gotham is rotting, and he's the king of this rotten city, and Batman is trying to save the city. So some straightforward comic book movie, something. I'm not too interested in a sequel to this movie. That's why I don't have a very definitive answer for that.
I think I'm in your camp where I'm anti-sequel. Some movies are meant to be self-contained. And again, even when I was introducing this film, I really said it was a skin within this universe telling a story, where you could probably have taken it off, like you said, or replaced it with another universe and still had a similar story.
Yep.
But if we had to, either one of these ones sound fun.
It'll be fun. It will be fun. But it makes as much sense as making a sequel to Taxi Driver.
I do think it's worth pointing out that, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I always thought of Joker and Batman as somewhat contemporaneous with each other. And it's clear that that's not the case here. So, maybe we could work in a decent sequel where there's a passing of the torch from Joker to Joker.
Yep.
I don't know.
That's a good one. I like that.
One of our friends, he was on this show a lot. His name is Chris, has a theory that none of this movie actually happened. I know he's not alone with this. There are others that have that. And the only thing that really happens is the final sequence where they allude to him killing the person in the asylum. So that's another interpretation. And, you know, there could be a whole nother story. Or I like in the earlier questions, Kevin got this idea for a prequel of how he got committed the first time. Or maybe that was the first time he was committed and never left. Oh man, I think I just made my movie.
The problem with this idea of like it's all in your head is that you need a distinguished space when it's outside of his head. Otherwise, nothing matters. That's the problem. The stakes just kind of fall.
That was your problem with the film, right? Because that was your interpretation.
Well, no. That's my problem with that interpretation. With like Caligari, like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from an earlier episode, there's clearly a realistic time, a dream time, and a realistic time again. The film tells us this. It's when would be the dream time and when would be the realistic time with Joker.
But I mean, that's clearly intentional, right?
It's all a blur. What is real? What is from his perspective? Again, we said the what's the term? Unreliable narrator.
Right. And when he's unreliable, we end up knowing that. It's mostly through the ZZ Betts. What's her name? The female companion he has.
Yeah, but we don't know if it goes beyond that. That's what we're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
is that the only? That's the only definitive time we know for sure that he's making it all up in his mind. The reveal.
But what do you lose if everything is up for questioning? Right, you lose the stakes of the film. So I think I kind of push back against that interpretation that it's maybe everything in his head except the last sequence, because otherwise, you just took us on a ride that really wasn't happening.
I 100% agree with you, Tom. I want that not to be the case because I don't want to have wasted 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah,
of my life.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
So, especially if it was a fun ride, let's make it count for something. So while I don't think everything in the movie happened the way it happened for real or from multiple perspectives, but I think that's how he interpreted it. The woman was with him those times when she was actually not. So yeah, I really hope that they don't go the route of it was all in his mind, except for the end, because I really don't want to waste 4 hours and 30 minutes since I've watched this movie twice.
Yeah, fair.
All I have to say is, why so serious? Oh wait, that's a different portrayal of Joker.
What else does Robert De Niro have in common with this movie is that he was Joaquin Phoenix and Heath Ledger, Robert De Niro, and Marlon Brando, the only people to win Oscars for playing the same role, right?
Oh. Now there's actual trivia within Talking Pictures trivia.
The first time for everything.
It's time for question 3.
The top 2 questions for social workers, specifically Arthur's one, are... I told you it's going to get harder in round 2. There's a specific scene that references this. You will get 1 point per
each one
question.
Yeah, I think I could lock in.
I'll lock in just for the sake of being locked in here.
So 2 questions that the social worker asks?
No, not necessarily. The top 2 questions for social workers, specifically Arthur's one, are: there's a scene where he's talking with the social worker.
Does he say for social workers or by social workers?
You can say by. Things that they say. There's 2 things they always say. Now I'm really laying it out there. I don't want to give any more.
I'm almost positive I definitely have one.
I'm positive I don't have any, but I'll lock in.
That's what round 2 is all about.
Do you have a preview of how many you know?
Well, you're going to know right now because he was last. Did you lock in?
I locked in. Yeah, I'm last.
So start us up.
Well, there is the... how have you been? And did you keep up your journal?
Good questions. Kevin?
So I remember the scene very clearly. You know, he says, "You don't really listen. All you do is ask the same two questions every time I'm here." And I believe one of them is, "How are you feeling today?" And the other one, I'm much less sure of. I'll go with, "Do we need to adjust your medication?"
Tom?
I had, how are you feeling today? And are you having any negative thoughts?
Okay. Tom is going to get 1 point.
What was the other one? And it was
How's-
negative thought.
Yeah,
Negative
it's
thoughts.
it's definitely negative. He goes, they always say, how's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? He's like, I only have negative thoughts.
Yeah, I remember negative thoughts because he says I only have negative thoughts.
So he compares
Yeah,
life
yeah.
to two things. And one of them is he thought his life was a tragedy, or life is a tragedy. I want to really focus on that element within this film.
Is it a tragedy? I mean, if you're looking at the classic structure, like tragedy, comedy, and let's say romance, which is, like trying to tragic comedy, what would this movie classify as?
Well, he has an epiphany later that it's not a tragedy, but we do go through a certain sequence of events in his life that are leading us in that direction until he has a certain epiphany. But I was just trying to see if we could bring those elements in, and we could disagree.
I would say the movie plays as an ironic comedy. It ends with this person in a happy position. He's alive, he's happy, he seems to have achieved something. Ironic because his achievement is obviously destructive and isolating.
Which is true, but he does have a lot of tragic things happen within his life.
Right, but would the movie itself be, if you were to look at a movie being a romance, or something between tragedy and comedy, a tragedy or a comedy, what would you say this movie is?
No, we're not saying the movie. We're saying his depiction of life as he knows it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
I just don't want to go down genres with this.
Well, the
topic.
movie is absolutely set up to be a tragedy up until a certain point, right? And I think that's maybe what Nick is alluding to is, he sets it up to be this, he's going to go on this TV show and kill himself. And, if that were the ending of the movie, I think there's a pretty good case for it being a tragedy, right? And I think up until the point where he is with his mother and he says, it's not actually a tragedy, it's a comedy. And he I think that's when he turns and goes, okay, this isn't going to be how it ends. This isn't going to be how this story goes. It's not a tragedy.
I guess speaking directly to Nick's question from Arthur's perspective, I'm not too knowledgeable about the exact definition of tragedy and comedy in terms of genres and everything, but from Arthur's perspective, I think up until a certain point, he felt his life was a tragedy because he felt everything was done to him, that everybody was mean to him, and that he had no control over his life and where it's going. So it's sad because he's just on this river of tragedy. And then at a certain point, when starts when he gets the gun, and then when the violence really ramps up, probably in the subway when he kills those 3 people, and he likes it. That's when he realizes, wait a minute, I do have control. I can decide what happens. And I think that's when it kind of turns into a comedy for him. And I think even with his plan of shooting himself on TV, that was the punchline for him. That was his punchline. So I think even then he had already turned it into a comedy in his mind. And then I think it was a last minute change where he decided to not kill himself.
The beginning of the tragedy goes way back too, because once he finds out about how crazy his mother was, he was abused by her boyfriend, and they found him handcuffed to the radiator or something. Now, if we wonder why he got committed the first time, he didn't exactly have the strongest upbringing, and he was adopted too. So he had all these different things, hearing that he might be a Wayne, and like just all this crazy nonsense. He never was in control. But I think you guys hit the nail on the head with saying that the switch flips when he starts taking the control, when he starts making decisions versus having everything happen to him.
Yeah, I agree. I think the embracing of agency is when it becomes a livable life for him.
For sure, that's when he starts having fun, I guess, to put it in a crass way.
We have a very close game here. Tom is in the lead with 3 points, and Ragnar and Kevin are right behind with 2 points. Going into our last question here.
It's time for question 4.
What is the ending catchphrase of Murray Franklin's show?
Locked in.
Locked in.
No pressure, Tom. Episode's on the line here.
Yeah, Lord, I don't think I remember. Lock in.
Stars up, Tom.
I was gonna say, good night and keep laughing.
It's actually Here's Johnny. No.
Tom, you just totally made that up.
I believe it's Ragnar. Did I get that right? I think Kevin was quick on this, on the buzzer on this one.
Yeah. He definitely knows what it is. I think I know what it is. But then I'm just wondering, is that just the song that was playing in the background? Anyways, the answer is That's Life.
Kevin.
That's life.
Oh, we have a 2-way tie. But Tom, the way we always play this is everyone's in it for bonus round, and that's a 3-point question. So it still is not impossible. So yes, the line "That's life." This is when I started thinking of the next phase of Arthur Fleck's life, where he starts to think life is a comedy, and I thought that was kind of very fitting that the catchphrase for Murray's show is "That's life," where he takes a bullet in the head. I mean, it's just a dark comedy, but a comedy nonetheless.
Yeah, I like that line because it's kind of in the vein of like this too shall pass, right? Like if you're happy, it makes you sad. If you're sad, it makes you happy. It can go either way. That's life. Oh, that's wonderful. That's life. Life is awesome. Or that's life. Better luck next time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's transient. It itself doesn't matter.
Much like this movie, right, Tom?
Well, I think this movie mattered. It made a bucket of money, didn't it?
Well, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. It didn't matter to me, maybe.
I think it's important because by the end of the movie, once he turns his life into a comedy, it's just about kind of like rolling with the punches. He just, whatever happens, he accepts it and reacts to it, to the point where I don't know why I'm getting this impression. I don't remember if this is what he says, but I still believe that pretty much right up until he went on, he was going to kill himself. And then he maybe saw Murray make fun of him one last time. And he said, forget it. I'm going to embrace this movement that I inadvertently started and I don't really care about, but I'm going to embrace it. And I'm going to lash out. And so the point is, that's life is just kind of like rolling with the punches, when it's, knowing that this too shall pass, is still change. So he said, don't take anything too seriously because that's life. And so he confesses on air, he kills, he goes up to the camera, he doesn't care. That's life. So I think it kind of summarizes who he has become at the end.
I think he is genuinely pretty happy at the end. He seems like he is liking life, and obviously that's not such a great thing for the people around him. But I think that speaks to it turning into a comedy thing. Is like things turned out really well for him. I feel like he's gonna live his life, enjoy it, and then at the end look back and say, hey, that was fun. Obviously that's there's a lot to be said and why that's a bad thing for society, but certainly from his perspective, it's a lot of fun, and it's a comedy for sure at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting. His happy life is living in an Arkham mental hospital, harming people more or less at his discretion. Because he doesn't feel anything for anyone, right? That's what we find out, is that he just doesn't have an empathetic ability. And so, yeah, having the kind of freedom to harm people, that's what that's what makes his life worth living. But it's also kind of combined. There is this kind of nihilistic strain, right? Because he does not embrace the populism he inspires. He specifically says that I'm political in no way. So he doesn't embrace that, even though when they free him inexplicably, because how would they know he was in that car? But whatever. When they do free him, he does this kind of dance. He does sort of tip his hat to them. So there's this odd kind of combination of populism and also nihilism, which aren't necessarily compatible. But I think as long as he's creating chaos, he's happy. I think that's ended up being what it is.
And he got what he was. I mean, he doesn't care about the movement. I think you're absolutely right. But he does care that he finally has a loving audience that he stumbled into. And so, I mean, that's what he's been dreaming about his whole life.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he jumps at the occasion.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. Just that, you know, like I totally agree. He doesn't care about the movement. He doesn't care about. I think he embraces it to the extent that he likes to see people that he deems as bad get what they deserve in his mind. But beyond that, he's not invested in the movement. But you know, like Ragnar said, he is hook, line, and sinker for this adoring crowd for sure.
It's time for a bonus question.
What movie is displayed on the theater marquee in Gotham?
Locked in. Wait, which one? There's two. Do you want me to tell you both of them?
The one that's the answer. You might have me stumped, actually.
I'll lock in for sure.
Wait, what was the question again?
What movie is displayed on the theater marquee in Gotham?
Okay, yeah. Marquee. I already locked in. I was just double check. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, start us up.
I know exactly. I'm picturing the shot in my head, but the marquee is blank in my head. So I'm going to go with Kevin Loses the Musical.
Okay.
I love that movie.
Okay, so there's two marquees. There's one where Joker where he's in the police car and gets hit. That's Ace in the Hole. It's a 1950s movie whose title was The Big Carnival. That was like its subtitle. So there you go. The other movie is the movie that they come out of, the Wayans come out of, which is Zorro the Gay Blade, which I looked up, which couldn't have been The Mask of Zorro, which I think is the original movie they came out of in the comic books, because Zorro the Gay Blade came out in 1981. So those are the two movies on marquees.
First of all, if anyone listening to this needs to go watch Ace in the Hole. It's a fantastic movie. I didn't realize marquee, and thinking of the physical marquee, I was just thinking about what was the big movie that everybody in Gotham went to go see, and that was Modern Times, where they were projecting it, and he goes to see Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, that was also
also a great movie.
No.
Also,
Carnival is Arthur's clown name.
Yeah,
so
that's why I think they put it there. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think Ace in the Hole was.
That's a good Easter egg.
Yeah, because Zorro the Gay Blade is 1981, which is, I guess, the presumptive year of this film. But like Ace in the Hole, I'm like, this is a 50s movie. Why is it going on now? And I looked it up and was like, oh, that's why. It's a reference. Oh, there's actually a bunch more. So the movie theater where the Waynes are murdered, there's actually a few movies on the marquee. I didn't realize that. Now that I'm looking it up,
I think one's probably Modern Times.
No, Modern Times is not on that marquee. It's on the other one.
It's probably.
So congratulations, Tom. You did get there. coming back from behind here, actually, to sweep in and get the episode. So congrats.
Thank you.
Yay.
It seems somewhat unfair. It's kind of like the overtime rules in the NFL, where whoever scores first wins.
Well, if one of them chose to get the answer wrong, they could have secured a victory for the other.
For someone that didn't like this movie, he sure was paying a lot of attention to it.
Well, you always got to do your homework, and
This is Nick and House all over again.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
And I'm definitely proposing a rule change wherein only the people who are tied with the highest score
Yes,
move on.
that's
to
what I
overtime.
said last time.
Nope.
Pretty rules.
Nope. You can't. You got to win it fair and square. I'll give you another bonus question for 0 points. So here we go.
All right.
Which probably should have been the question. Well, depending on how obvious it is, because the other one, I don't know, for some reason wasn't as straightforward as I thought it would have been. What is the name of the facility that they send Arthur Fleck to?
I thought it was Arkham Asylum, not Asylum, Arkham Hospital? Or is that wrong?
It's
Anybody
3 words.
else?
It's
Oh.
Arkham something hospital.
Ragnar?
Memorial?
Arkham Looney Bin?
That's exactly what it is.
There you go.
It was actually chiseled in marble.
Mhm.
It was Arkham State Hospital. So,
Oh.
There you
I
go.
actually used, you know where that is?
yeah.
That is the Navy Yard on 59th Street in Brooklyn. I used to live a few blocks from there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've run past that building many a time. Yeah.
Sure.
My old home.
Past that building, right?
Yeah.
We believe you, yeah.
Yeah. I'm still there.
I was gonna say, this is all from Tom's perspective.
Exactly.
Mhm.
This whole episode.
I'm on a
has just
podcast.
been,
I'm on a podcast.
I finally won.
Tom has killed us
The
all many
movies in my
times.
mind are real.
Yeah.
The movies
Mhm.
in my mind are real.
Oh.
By the
Oh,
end, we're
you're-
all like, "You're right, Tom. This movie did suck."
No, only Tom would have contrarians in his mind.
Yeah, I said I loved it, and Tom shot me in the head. That's
Oh Lord, yeah.
It's time for Movie Rent.
Oh, I think I gave my view on this film quite prominently. I'd like to hear what people who guys, what attracted you to this? Oh, I'm sorry, Ragnar. It looks like you had something to say.
Well, I just want to say, like, we spent most of this time talking about the philosophy behind the movie, and obviously that's super important. But I also want to give some time to, like, just a straight up execution of the film. I just feel there were some really phenomenal images created in this movie. I'm thinking in particular of the scene where his two friends, I did air quotations, which obviously no one saw because this is audio only, but where his two friends from work come to visit him, and then he kills one of them pretty right off the bat, and
Yeah,
he has this
gruesomely.
painted face with blood splattered on him, and his other friend who's short is just like terrified in the corner, and he's trying to jump for the lock, and it's just a terrifying scene that I thought was filmed very well. Same with him coming into his imaginary girlfriend's apartment, and he's just like, he has this horrifying look, and it's just, I thought the movie executed some really good imagery, and I'm always down for that.
Even when he was all painted up as Joker,
Mhm.
it wasn't a clean look. You could
No.
like like smell the grease on his hair. And by the way, I thought he didn't look like the actor, like Joaquin Phoenix. I didn't think he looked like himself when he had all that makeup on. It was actually kind of interesting to me how that makeup made him look a little different. But I liked that it was like an imperfect clown, just scraggly and dirty, and somehow he still pulled it off with all his fancy dance moves and lightened up the mood.
I think the imperfect clown has been there since the beginnings of Joker, right? Like, he's always been kind of this, like, yeah, I guess he's a clown, but like, what's the deal with, even in like the original 60s Batman, it was like, what's the deal with that mustache under his makeup, you know? And then, like, you know, in like the in the Michael Keaton Batman, like, clearly he's not really a clown at all, except for when he decides after his horrible transformation that he wants to be sort of clownish. So I think that imperfect clown, or that sort of psycho clown, has always been a part of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it was executed pretty well here.
Yeah, I mean, a clown's a chaotic thing, right? It's like laughter. It's sort of a chaotic force. It's something that you can't really control, and the clown figure is somebody who kind of comes in and disrupts stability, right? Clowning around is sort of in a disruption of stability, and that's what any kind of what the Joker is in Batman. If the Joker has a backstory or doesn't, like the Heath Ledger version versus this version, in either case, it's a force of disruption, and Batman is this kind of stabilizer, which is, I think, more clear in the Nolan films than anywhere else. But he's sort of supposed to keep everything okay and keep the dark forces at bay so that society can kind of work peacefully. And a clown is someone who disrupts that, who interrupts or inverts the normal social order. And Joker certainly does that in this picture.
Speaking of images, I thought, as much as the Bruce Wayne's parents getting murdered thing seemed really shoehorned in there, I really appreciated the pearls flying image there. That was a nice callback to the original Batman. I thought that was pretty.
You got to have that for sure.
Although I was a little bit disappointed you didn't say "ever dance with the devil in a pale moonlight."
That's just something I used to say.
Best line ever.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. It's So I just think it's a well done movie. Maybe not all its statements land or its philosophical points are expressed correctly, but I'm always down for a well choreographed and good cinematography in a movie. You don't see that very often. So on a technical level, I think it's a phenomenal film. And that's why I'm drawn to it.
Okay. Yeah. No, I certainly feel that. Can I ask you guys, what do you think of like the whole father plot?
I thought it was cool that you don't know at the end, and I think your ability to maybe know ends with both Thomas Wayne and Arthur's mother dying. I think it's kind of cool that they decided not to give you any clarity on that.
I think I had a different perspective. I thought I had clarity.
What do you
saw
think?
that he was adopted. We saw that he was adopted, but you're saying that maybe it could have still been a cover-up?
His mom was being, I guess you would call it, interrogated in the mental hospital, and she said no. Thomas fabricated all those documents to try to hide what really happened.
That's what I was thinking when you went down that was your thought process. I thought it was like just nonsense from a crazy woman, but I could see how you have that interpretation that he's so powerful, because the powerful and rich can get away with anything. So they did have that vibe in the film. I didn't catch it like that, but that's interesting.
I think you're meant to sort of lean towards, probably not. But I think you're also meant to have that like, well, it's not impossible. I could see a world where maybe it would happen, especially in a fictional universe like this. Like that seems maybe. And I think keeping that balance of like, I'm 90% sure it's not true, but 10%, I don't know. I think that's the right balance moving forward.
Even when we're introduced to him in this film, he's not this like pious guy. Like even his interaction with him in that bathroom, I mean, he slugs him. Like that's like his first go-to move. It's not like, oh, nice to meet you. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, you're
Hope
certainly
you have better times.
You're certainly left with the vibe that this guy is capable of that, right?
He called everyone clowns, and he wanted to run for election.
And like as a father, I get the don't come near my son again kind of thing, but I'm not sure I'd ever put it the way he did. Like, touch my son again, I'll expletive kill you. That's not something a level-headed person would say to someone he just met, regardless of the circumstances, I think.
He's the closest thing to a villain, right?
Society is the villain, Tom. Society.
But who else embodies it more than Thomas Wayne?
Yes, because he's supposed
True.
to be leading society, governing the way of Gotham.
He's certainly the oppressor into society's rebellion, if you want to call it that.
He definitely plays like a father figure to many aspects, to many parts of the movie. Bruce, Arthur, the city itself, in wanting to become a mayor. So he does carry a big load there. And I think one thing that Kevin said, I think kind of summarizes the movie perfectly, is 90% sure, 10% not sure. Because I feel like, unlike a movie like Inception, where I feel like there is a correct answer and you have to solve the puzzle to get there.
Is it
This
still
one is
spinning?
more like-
Is it still spinning, or is it going to fall over?
It falls over. That is the correct answer. It's all in the wedding ring. Anyways, it's this one I don't think has a correct answer. It's just how you interpret it. That's the way it is, and go with it. But you're always going to be like, but what's the answer? You just don't know, and we'll never know. So I think that like uneasiness, that 10% that causes you to be like, not quite settled in, that's kind of the fun of it. And same thing to the father.
Well, the whole purpose of this movie is to make you feel uneasy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You're not supposed.
Sure.
You're not supposed to have
feeling
a good
uneasy the
time.
whole time.
Yeah. This isn't the feel good movie of the year,
And I think like you said, it embodies the whole movie, because at the same time you think, I know that this is in his head, or at least I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But yeah, there's this. I think I know where the line between his mind and reality is, but I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think I'll ever be entirely sure. And that's
Exactly.
That's a Tom, you'll probably disagree with me, but I think that's a well-laid plot.
Yeah, that's the fun. I mean, Joker, he probably doesn't even know either. I'm not, after this podcast, I'm not even sure he killed those three guys, or he was just taking advantage, of the situation.
I'm not even sure if I saw this movie or if it was all in my head.
When does this podcast even start? Am I asleep? I don't know.
I'm not sure those guys were actually being jerks. I think he killed him,
Yeah.
but I think like they might have just been,
They
opening it up on
they
a train.
were offering a lady fries. She looked hungry, and he was concerned.
I mean, maybe they were joking, like obviously joking, like, "Hey, lady,
Right.
want a fry?" Like, of course she's gonna say no, And he took that as like, "Oh no, they're being serious, and they're such terrible people." And, things escalate from there.
Yeah, I think they're supposed to be pieces of crap. They throw the fries
sure.
at the yeah.
I did call them finance bros,
Yeah.
Again, I'm 90% sure they're pieces of crap.
Exactly. But are they?
Yeah,
10%.
regardless of if it's in his mind or not, I think there is something interesting about fatherlessness, right? It's a movie that ends with everybody not having a father.
True.
They have the populists have a leader, but like now both Bruce and Arthur don't have a father. The arc of development is that Arthur loses any chance of having a heritage, and Bruce loses his parents, and the city loses, a governor.
Future mayor.
Yeah.
Or mayor, governor, whatever. Yeah.
Potential mayor, whatever it is. Yeah.
I think there's also something to be said for there being a blurry line between bad father and absent father, right? Like, because Thomas is there, he's doing the father figure role, but he's all the worst parts about the father figure role. And then he's gone, and I guess it doesn't really matter at that point. But I think it's worth mentioning that, like, yeah, there are some father figures in here, and they're all bad.
Yeah, Murray would be the other one, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he seems pretty great until he meets him, and then he's kind of a jerk too.
Yeah.
He even says, "I wish I had a kid just like you," in that fantasy.
In the fantasy, yeah.
For sure.
I mean, that's definitely a father figure.
Yeah, and so it ends with father figures being executed, which is kind of a great way to think about rebellion, right? What else is rebellion other than executing a social father figure? It's It's the Freudian Oedipus drive writ large.
Well, what is worse, a bad father that you deal with, or an ex-father that's not around anymore? I think Arthur would say an ex-father would be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least you can kill it. At least you can kill the father. At least you could get revenge.
I'd like to once again congratulate our winner of the week, Tom, who took it in bonus round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Everybody
you guys didn't agree with
celebrate
his.
me. Celebrate me, you punks.
He went from losing to winning.
Yeah.
Tragedy to comedy, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For me, not for you, sir.
You can find more of our content wherever you listen to podcasts, on our YouTube channel, Twitter @Talking Studios, and our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com. We're extremely grateful to all those who subscribe, like, follow, and leave a review. Do you think the joke was funny? Why or why not? Let us know on Twitter, talkingpicturestrivia@gmail.com, or give us a call at 201-467-8679. Thanks again, Ragnar and Kevin, for joining us today.
It's been a great time. I'm always happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
You can find me on Twitter at ThomasLehman15, Talking Pictures Trivia B-Side. There's another podcast we do. And yeah, thank you.
I can also be found on Twitter @TheNicknamed. Join us next time when we start our movies that defined a director block with Tom's recommendation from Japan in 1954, Sancho the Bailiff by director Kenji Mizoguchi. Stay tuned for our first impressions of this film.
Ding, 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 ding.
Hey.
Next week, we'll be discussing Sancho the Bailiff. Tom, how was your watch?
It was good. Thanks. This is my first Mizoguchi. I wanted to watch a Japanese inspiration for Kurosawa because we've seen every Kurosawa movie and wanted to go back further and see what he was watching that inspired him. And this is listed as one of those great films. And I really liked it. It is a very obviously heartbreaking, very sad movie. I think the thing that I was most surprised was by the camera movement and the way the different people were moving as the camera was moving with them. It looked really gorgeous. I mean, the camera stuff is quite incredible. I think that was the biggest thing I took away from it, besides the plot and what have you, was just how intricate the movement of the people and the camera itself was. And I guess maybe the other thing was learning about the history of actually this story that this is based on, how kind of like fun kind of oral tradition stuff is, and where this story came from and how it evolved was also cool, though that's extra textual. That has nothing necessarily to do with the film itself. Pat, how was your viewing?
So I knew absolutely nothing about this movie when I sort of signed up for it. I just saw the year and went, that looks like a good film. I didn't even know it was in Japanese when I signed up for it. So I did not know what I was getting myself in for. And I watched it very early this morning at 5 a.m. So it was quite a movie to wake up and watch. Makes for a great day.
Maybe go back to sleep.
No, I did not. The boys were up before I could go back to sleep. But anyway, it is it's a very beautiful film. I was stuck because I was sort of looking at it even from like a historical perspective, because what interested me is that, because originally I thought, at least the way it opened, I thought it was sort of gonna be the golden days of feudal Japan, and this sort of, and they were going to sort of have some sort of like a peasants revolt, something like that. I thought that's what I was kind of gearing myself up for, which is very much not what it is. So it interested me from a historical perspective that this movie was made relatively shortly after World War II, and kind of trying to see how that would have affected the filmmaking. And it's a striking film to be made at any time, but particularly in that period of Japanese history. But it's a fantastic film. Very, as Tom said, it's very moving. It's a very it's a powerful film. KJ, what'd you think?
I enjoyed it. I watched this on my phone like I often do. And I just want to defend that a little bit because I've gotten some snarky comments from some of the guests about this. The phone watching experience is pretty wonderful for those who haven't done it. Get yourself a good set of headphones, put on do not disturb. So now the second screen that usually distracts you from movies is the movie. So there's nothing to distract you. And honestly, your phone is probably one of the best screens you have in the house. I digress. Um, I had seen another Mizoguchi film before this one and hadn't realized it. So I was a little familiar with the director. But here's my advice, audience. And this also kind of goes against the grain of thinking usually. My recommendation is to read the plot summary before you watch it. I think this movie was much more enjoyable on my second watch when I knew what was coming, kind of like a play or something in the theater. It's more about seeing the events unfold than any kind of twists or turns in the movie. So that's my, I dare you, audience, to go know the plot before you watch this. How about you, Nick?
Complete opposite experience to you, KJ. I just treated myself to an obnoxiously large TV. And you know what? It really brings out the 1954 qualities when you watch a foreign film on a 77-inch OLED. So definitely, I'd recommend it. This movie, I enjoyed the story, but boy, is it a slow burn. I did not follow KJ's recommendation and read the plot summary before I started the film. So I was along for the ride. I did enjoy it, but it took a while for us to get there. And that's all I'll say now. I'll save the rest for the episode.